What happens when a teacher turns her classroom into a living lesson on racism? In 1968, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Jane Elliott, who at the time was an elementary school teacher in Iowa, divided her all-white third graders into blue eyes and brown eyes. And what followed shocked the children, outraged the nation, and became one of the most infamous and influential social exercises in American history. In this explosive conversation with Jane, Jane tells Off the Couch with Dr. Greg to revisit her groundbreaking Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise, to explain why it drew as much fury as praise, and to reveal why the lessons from that single classroom are more urgent today than ever before. Is America ready to face the truths that she exposed 50 years ago, or are we still running from them? We'll find out today on Off the Couch. Today we have Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is an educator, internationally known teacher, lecturer, diversity trainer, and recipient of the National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education. She exposes prejudice and bigotry for what it is, an irrational class system based purely on arbitrary factors. And if you think that does not apply to you, you're in for a rude awakening. Today, we're going to talk to her on Off the Couch. Welcome, Jane.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's really nice to have you. You're 91 years young, as the saying goes. It's really actually quite amazing.
Old. I am 91 years old. You don't get younger as you get 91.
I appreciate that.
Be careful. Come on. It took me 91 years to get old.
I appreciate.
Say I'm young.
I appreciate it. So thank you for, it's, I have to talk about what you did because it was so inspiring to me. And this is, of course, the first time I was exposed to the exercise that you did in 1968 in that classroom in Riceville, Iowa. I was just, when you did that, I was in second grade. Oh, no. In 1968, I think I was, I was in kindergarten.
Okay.
So I was right in that age group that you were teaching at that time. And I have to say, I just can't wait to talk about what happened because the way you taught blew me away. There are good teachers and maybe not so good teachers, but yeah, I was very impressed with your style. If I can just say, can we go to what made you so famous? Actually, it was in 1968. That's when I guess I was in kindergarten or first grade. It was only a day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. You asked a class of white third grade students in rural Iowa, what would it feel like to experience discrimination? Okay, and it was actually back in April 5th, 1968. That was the morning after Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. What did you see or feel that made you decide? Well, let me go back and I'm being really sloppy. I'm nervous, Jane.
I'm sorry.
I have to say I'm nervous having you. No, isn't that wild?
Yes, that's very wild. That's okay.
You know what? No, I mean, you have to understand, there are few people that you learn about that you're really bowled over by. I learned about what you did in this classroom in Iowa and when I was in school. And I went through, I got a PhD, I got, I was at UCLA, so I was over here, doing my thing. And I went and got a PhD in psychology and we learned about you, and the effects of this exercise. And I was so very impressed. And, you just never think you're going to meet the person who actually did this thing. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in that particular point of view. But I skipped the intro. So if you don't mind, Jane, I'm going to go back. To help you took in 1968, you took this elementary school class. It was a third grade class in rural Iowa. And you asked them what it would feel like to feel discrimination, and to help them understand, you divided this class by eye color into blue eyes versus brown eyes, the blue eye, brown eye exercise. And you treated one group as superior and the other is inferior. And then the next day you reversed the roles. And the exercise exposed in real time how arbitrary the divisions and expectations can shape behavior, identity, and outcome. And over the decades, you've repeated this exercise. This is what's really mind blowing. You've repeated the exercise with adults, and it's been featured in documentaries like The Eye of the Storm, Frontlines, A Class Divided, and even in a 1992 episode of Oprah that I have to say I just watched this morning, and I was again blown away by the reactions in the audience, and and all that happened in such a very, very short time. And it really sparks important questions about teaching, about race, power, human dignity, how all these things work. So I'm really glad you're here joining us. So let me go back. Take us back to April 5th, 1968. That was the morning. So Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated.
That's
And
when I go
if
back.
I understand correctly,
Well,
yeah.
I get a physical reaction every time I think about that day, and talking about it makes me literally sick to my stomach because we were studying the Indian unit at that time. And I was teaching the Indian unit the way you're supposed to teach the Indian unit, as if we so called white people came here and civilized them, took over their land, killed their women, raped their women, killed their children, and took over the land. But that's not the way we taught it. We taught the lie about the Indian unit. They were not Indians. They were not from India. They were not red, and we were not white. But I was teaching it the way I was supposed to. I was taking the teepee home that my previous year's third graders had made. I was going to wash it, dry it, and get rid and iron it on the living room floor, so that we could hang it up, put it up the next morning, and paint it with Indian symbols chosen by white people, and learn the Sioux Indian prayer, which says, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I had that teepee under my arm. I walked into my house. The telephone was ringing. I answered the telephone. So my sister, and she said, "Is your television on?" I said, "No." She said, "You better turn it on." Why? Because they shot him. Who they shoot this time? Martin Luther King Jr. And at that moment, time stopped because I couldn't imagine a country in which you didn't dare to stand up and say the truth unless you were a white male. I became absolutely furious, and the kids were outside playing. I got them their supper. I got them to bed. I got the teepee washed and dried and ironed, and was ironing it on the living room floor. And there, on the television, was Walter Cronkite talking to 3 leaders of the black community, and he said to those 3 men, "Don't you men think don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can?" And I thought, how dare you? How dare you? So I changed the channel, and there's another white man saying,
Wow.
"When our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line?" And I thought, your people? Good Lord, these are my people. These were here before I was. They owned this land. Give me a break. I was just furious. So I rolled up the teepee, threw it in the closet, went out and got my husband's supper. He worked in a factory the afternoon shift at that time. He walked in and I was crying, and he said, "They killed him, didn't they?" I said, "Yes, they did." And he hugged me and tried to comfort me, and he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, tomorrow we're going to learn the Sioux Indian prayer, 'Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked him on his moccasins.' And I'm going to allow my little white students to walk in the
Mhm.
shoes of a so-called black child in this country for a day." He said, "How are you going to do that, Jane?" I said, "I'm going to introduce the racism based on the color of their eyes. Skin color and eye color are caused by the same chemical, melanin. And I'm going to judge my students by the color of their
Mhm.
eyes." He said, "You'll lose your job." I said, "If I lose my job for doing the right thing, I don't want to teach in Riceville." He said, "We need the job. We've got 4 kids to raise." I said, "I'm going to do it, Brian Darrell." And it was like, here she goes again. What am I going to do? There was nothing he could do, because at that moment, such horror. I watched such horror on television that night, and I watched sophisticated, so-called superior, educated white males say things that were totally unacceptable to any person. To say those things when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. To say that, and I think it was Walter Cronkite who said that instead of the other one. But it was awful. And he went to bed, and I went to bed, and he loved me, and he hugged me, and he said, I hope you're going to get through this. And I said, I hope you're going to, because I was furious. I got up the next morning, got ready for school. I was walking out the door, and he said, he was feeding the kids breakfast. And as I walked past, he said, you aren't going to do that exercise, are you? And I said, is Martin Luther King Jr. still dead today? And I wasn't smiling. I was furious, because by then there were tears in my eyes, because I thought he would support me on this, and he wasn't, because he was smarter than I was. He knew what was going to happen to our family if I did that exercise in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa. I didn't know. I had no idea. We had lived in Waterloo for 11 or 12 years, but I had no idea what he had learned by running a grocery store, National Tea Store, on the north end of Waterloo, which was the black section. He knew more about what was going on, what would go on in Riceville, Iowa, if I did that exercise there, than I had any idea of, even though I had been born and raised there. It was absolutely terrifying. I'm busy, call later. So I went to school. The first student in my room came in and said, hey, Elliott, they shot that king last night. Why'd they shoot that king? I said, we're going to talk about that. So we talked about it, and I could tell by the way my students were talking that the words that they were using at home, that their fathers were using at home about this horrible thing, were not the words that my father would use. They weren't the words that my father did use. And I said, wait a minute. Do you kids have any idea how it would feel to be black? No. Would you like to know? Yeah. Would you like to do something today that will help you know? Yeah. It was like, oh boy, this will be fun. Because everything we did in that room was fun. Because I think you have to get kids involved in what you're doing. I believe in what John Dewey said, we learn by doing. I decided, okay, we're going to learn this by doing, just like we learn everything else in this room. It's going to be an experiential experience. I had no idea how ugly it was going to be. I had no idea that I could tell my brown-eyed children that they were brighter than the blue-eyed children because they had more melanin in their eyes. I had no idea that little brown-eyed Debbie sitting in the front row that day would look up at me while I was talking to them and say, how come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes? And I had no idea that I would think, well, you little
Oh,
about that little girl. I had never felt that way about that before, but that was my first reaction mentally. I thought, how dare you? And then blue-eyed Alan Moss in the back row spoke up and said, well, her eyes ain't, she's all right, even if she is blue-eyed, she's okay. And I thought, there's my Uncle Tom. He's going to protect me through this, but he isn't going to argue with them. He's going to protect me, but only because I look like him. It was the most amazing experience I have ever had. I had the kids, I put armbands on the kids who had the wrong color eyes. I let the wrong color eyes, I made them sit in the back of the room. They moved their desk to the back of the room. Brown-eyed children moved their desk to the front of the room. And I watched my third graders in that classroom in Riceville, Iowa, become a microcosm of society. I watched my little third grade kids behave in ways that they had learned to behave because of the way they had been raised and because of the way they had been educated and because of the way they had been taught in the church as well as in the school. I watched kids who were loving and kind and generous. The day before, when they were brown-eyed, they became greedy, judgmental, obnoxious, little powerful, racist little monsters. I didn't like them very well by the end of that day, and they didn't like me very well either, because I was absolutely amazed at how willing they were to go along, to get along. I watched little brown-eyed boys who were dyslexic and will be as dyslexic as long as they live, read words they couldn't read that day. That day they read words they couldn't have read the day before, because I told them they were superior and they lived
wow.
up to my expectations of them. On the other hand, oh my, we had the Lutheran minister, I think it was the Lutheran minister's daughter in that class. Brilliant, reading at the 6th grade level when she came into the class, but she was blue-eyed. And on the day she had the wrong color eyes, she couldn't read. She couldn't spell. She stumbled when she crossed the room. She came in from recess crying because she had been treated unfairly and didn't know how to take it as a blue-eyed person. I thought, what have I constructed here? What am I doing here? What am I going to do about this? Well, I went down to the teacher's lounge at noon because there were 2 other 3rd grade teachers and I needed some support. Walked into the teacher's lounge. There were probably 10 teachers there, no educators. 10 teachers, a big difference between educators and teachers. Teachers' feet give you facts and figures to get you ready for the end of your testing. Educators lead you out of ignorance. And the number one ignorance in the United States of America is the ignorance of racism. I told those teachers,
Mm.
what was going on in my classroom. And when I had finished telling them what was going on, the older of the third grade teachers said, I don't know, the younger one, she was about 47, 50 at the time, said, I don't know how I have time for all that extra stuff. It's all I can do to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, as far as I was concerned, she hadn't taught reading, writing, and arithmetic yet. She might as well have done the extra stuff. The other one looked up at me and said, I don't know why you're doing that. And she was over 60 years old. I thought it was about time they shot that son of a bitch. And all those teachers either smiled or laughed and nodded.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Wow. I thought, my God, what's going on here? I can't teach third graders. I'd have to teach these women who are from 40 to 60 years old. I don't have that kind of time. I went back to the classroom absolutely disgusted and determined that those kids of mine, my third graders, would not end up, when they were those teachers' ages, being that ignorant about racism. I was determined at that point that we were going to finish the day with the blue eyes on the bottom and the brown eyes on the top. I pulled down the map, the wall map. It was on a ruler map, and I pulled it down in the afternoon. The ring slipped off my thumb. The map went around and around and around the ruler, made that awful sound. And I said, well, I've done it again. And once again, little brown-eyed Debbie in the front row looked up at me and said, well, what do you expect? You've got blue eyes, haven't you? And as God is my judge, I have never felt like this about a child before, and only one since. I could see myself, in my mind's eye, I could see myself backhanding that little brown-eyed witch against the wall. I wanted her to hit that wall and slide down like a broken egg, and I wanted to be at the bottom when she got there. And I was furious at myself. And then Alan Moss said, oh, Debbie, her eyes ain't got nothing to do with it. She knows she never has been able to do that right. And I said, thank you, Alan. That is not particularly complimentary to say she never has been able to do that right, but I would have taken any kind of
No.
support at that time. It was the worst day I have ever taught in my life. And I went home that night, it was Friday night, and I thought, well, they'll get over it over the weekend. It'll be better. We were supposed to go out on a picnic at the lake with some friends of ours, and one of their children was in my class. And the mother called me, and after I got home and said, we can't go to the lake. Rick is sick. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Well, we'll go without you, but please just take care of Rick and tell him we'll miss him. So my family, my husband and my 4 kids and I went out to the lake with our picnic basket, and we walked toward the table, and there sat Rick and his family. And as we walked toward that table, one of those big, tall, pale, stale males said, well, I hope somebody brought the watermelon. They're going to need it for these people. It had taken that short a time for the word to get out that that school had employed an N-word lover, and I was it. And that was the way it went for the rest of the time that I taught in Riceville, Iowa. I was the town's N-word lover, and my kids were abused on a daily basis until one of the elementary teachers, the elementary principal's wife who taught at the high school, stopped me in the hall one day on her way to a teacher's meeting and said, Jane, you've got to get your kids out of this school. I said, why would I do that? Their grandparents live in this town. She said, these teachers are trying to destroy your children and they're having fun with them. Get them out of here. So we moved to Osage because my husband was working in a store in Osage, and it was a good idea for us to be in Osage. My kids didn't mind leaving because they hadn't wanted to leave ever, because my father was there, and he's absolutely one of the finest people I've ever known. They didn't want to leave there, but things had gotten so ugly that they were glad to get out of Riceville when we left there. So I learned, and then came Monday. Oh my God. I hated to go back to school. I thought these blue-eyed kids are going to get even. There's going to be hell to pay rent to. This is going to be terrible. Because I heard the blue-eyed boys in the restroom talking about what they're going to do to those brownies when they got on top. So I knew this was going to be ugly. So we put the blue-eyed people in front, put the brown-eyed people in the back, made the brown-eyed people wear the armbands, and I watched those blue-eyed kids be kinder and more loving and more understanding and more accepting of the brown-eyed kids than they had been to the blues. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Because they had experience.
So on Tuesday, we did this thing again on Monday, but it was so much less vicious. So on Tuesday, before they discussed it at all, each child had to write a 4-paragraph composition telling who Martin Luther King Jr. was, how the child felt on Monday, how the child felt on Friday, how the child felt on Monday, and what discrimination is. Then we got in a circle, and I said, in the magic circle, you say whatever you want to, and we will deal with it. And I said to those kids, little white kids, innocent little kids, I said, you blue-eyed kids said you were going to get even with the brownies. Why didn't you get even? None of you got even. And immediately, as if they had rehearsed it, and I don't think they could. I don't think they had. They said, because we found out how it feels to be on the bottom, and we didn't want to make anybody feel as bad as we felt when we were on the bottom. And I thought, oh my God, what happened here was education. This experiential learning actually led kids out of the ignorance of mistreating somebody else on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they have no control. Now, they couldn't have put it that way, but psychologists would put it that way. I think psychologists would say, you changed the way they thought. You changed their mental path. You changed their perception of themselves and their effect on the people around them. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had when those kids said, we found out how it feels to be on the bottom, and we didn't want to make anybody feel as bad as we did when we were on the bottom. If we could just teach that to what we call white people in this country, if we could just get pale, stale males to realize that women and people of other color groups, of browner color groups, don't want to get even. We know how it feels to be treated badly on the basis of a physical characteristic over which we have no control. If we were of the same attitude and behaviors as men, we wouldn't have children. And if we did, we wouldn't allow them to live past a certain age. You know that, and I know that. We do not abuse the weak. We do not discriminate, unless we're taught to, on the basis of physical characteristics over which we have no control. We enjoy having a boy, and we enjoy having a girl. We love both of them. But in that day, I learned more about child psychology than I ever learned in a class in high school or college, and more than I've learned since. It was just amazing what those kids learned that day.
You know, I did my dissertation on attitude change and interventions that work with attitude change, and I have to say that your exercise was probably the most effective attitude change exercise I've ever seen. And I'm not exaggerating. That
Well,
because
because
you
there's no
did
choice. You put them in it, and there's no
right.
choice. You don't give them, as we do in
You
this country, in this society. The minute you're born, no, before you're born, 9 months before you're born, we decide what your fate is going to be, and we treat you accordingly. When I have watched, oh Lord, shut up, Jay. Go ahead. Go ahead with what you
No,
were.
that was it. That was it because the bottom line is that you did immerse them. And I will say every time if attitude change lectures are given or diversity lectures, there's so much grace given to people and because so that they almost feel free to hold on to their negative attitudes. And what was so interesting is, yes, you did immerse people in what it feels like for a very short time, an hour, 2 hours, very, very short time. And it is absolutely a trip to see how people react when they've been in power, when they've been on top for all those years, and all of a sudden are denied access to a bathroom or a chair, or that they are told to sit down or to behave in a particular way, or
But with
to act like everyone.
But with a pale, stale
Yeah.
male who's in a position of power, you can
Uh-huh.
do it in 5 minutes. You can do it in 10 seconds. All I have to do is walk into the room and look at him, look up and down and say, oh, yeah, you're blue-eyed, aren't you? Well, sorry about that. And he crumbles in front of my very eyes. It's like, you bitch. And I'm thinking, I know what you're thinking, and now I'm going to fix you for that. I'm going to teach you not to think that way about me because you're responding to a minute in your life. And you will go out of here angry because of what I just did, and you'll be able to exert your power when you're out of here, but you'll never look at a white woman who looks like me again in the same way. In the future, you'll avoid people who look like me. Little old women who have a sharp tongue and blue eyes are dangerous. You have to watch out for us because we have learned the hard way by living in this country where if you're female, that we forget that in order to get the word female, they had to add the chemical symbol for iron, Fe, to the word male. And that's the way, the reason we're strong, because we have to be. We have to be, and we are, and we will be. And I'm watching females do things now that they would never have been allowed to do 25 years ago, because we're still
Yes.
here and we're still determined, and we found out that we are not the weaker sex. And if you think we are, then you need to go to the nearest rest home, count the number of women in the rest home, and then count the number of men, and realize that women aren't the weaker sex. We are the stronger sex because we have to be. But go ahead, what's your next question?
No, that's always been my impression. You know, it's so interesting, I have to say, is that this intervention is not, is someone might limit it to just about race, or it's really about race, sexism, homophobia. There are so many different things. When I saw the compassion you brought in talking about the LA riots, which I lived through here, because, and that was a very particular flashpoint in time that was a very ugly episode in Los Angeles history. And then when we lived through the AIDS crisis, I'm a gay man, Brian is too, and but I lived through that AIDS crisis. I actually came out right as AIDS was coming in, right as they announced it here at UCLA, and I had 50% of my friends die. And your
Yes.
compassion and clear-eyed focus to help people see that these things are in fact an issue that we need to address in society was
These
so
are
wonderful. I
these
have to say, I'm not.
these are learned
Yeah.
responses. And if these are learned
Yes.
responses, we can learn to respond in a different way. And you need to know that being gay is going to be seen as being very positive in the future. You're not going to be seen as a threat in the future, particularly if you're white. This is a good thing to be. You can be anything you want to be as long as you're a white male. But
Mm.
if you are a man of color who is also gay, then you're in trouble. Not because you're gay, but because you're a person of color. And not because you're a person of color, but because in this society, we live with self imposed racism, self imposed ignorance based on using the word race to separate us. I think, you know where black and white came from?
Hmm.
You know where that
No,
idea came
I
from?
don't.
Oh, for God's
No,
sake.
no, no.
During the, well, may I tell
Sorry.
you? Okay.
Yes,
During the
please.
Spanish Inquisition, a man named Torquemada was a vicar in the Catholic Church, and he had a lot of power in Spain. And he decided that he was going to turn all Christians in Spain into Catholics, and he was going to kill all those who weren't Christians. He had killed over 2,000 people in the most hideous, ungodly, inhumane ways. And somebody finally told him, after he had
Hmm.
killed 2,000 people, made him aware that many of the people he had killed were Christians. Then he realized that you can't tell what a person's religion is by the way they look. So he decided he was going to, and everybody in Spain and all over the world at that time was a shade of brown, just as they are now. But he decided
Hmm.
he was going to call the lighter skinned people white, because white is the color of goodness and purity. He was going to call the darker skinned people black, because black is the color of savagery and evil. And he did that, and he put us at polar opposites. In the late 1400s, he decided the good people were called white, bad people were called black, and if you were white and good and pure, it was incumbent upon you to kill those who were black, who were savage and evil. And we're still doing it.
Wow.
In the United States of America, we are still hanging men whom we call black from trees, because it's all right, because after
Yes,
all,
that just
they're
happened.
savage and
Yes.
evil, because
Yeah.
that's what we have learned over the years. It was a lie then, and it's a lie now, and I am angry about the fact that in the United States of America, we have hired a chief executive who is a thief executive and has made things worse instead of better in the last 9 months where racism is concerned. We have taken drastic steps backward in racism in this country in the last 9 months. Do not tell me that one person can't make a difference. One person can destroy a community.
Well, one finding from my dissertation was it has to come from the top. Attitude change has to come from the top. That the
No,
person
no,
who, not that it
no.
has to, but it's most effective. Well, you don't think so?
No, it doesn't have to come from the top. It can come from
No,
a
not have
teacher.
to. That was a bad word I used. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't have to
But
come
it's
from the top.
very
All you
effective
have to
when
do,
it does.
but all you have to do is have
Yeah. Sorry,
textbooks
Jane.
that teach the lie. All you have to do is have a Mercator map that shows the equator 2/3 of the way down the map, because the Pope told Mercator to draw a map that showed the spread of Christianity. So on the Mercator map of the world, uh, Greenland is twice as 8 times larger than South America. But the legend on the
Hmm.
map says South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. Now here's this map that I'm there is still in some kids in some classes they're
Oh,
still
wow.
using the Mercator map of the world. It is absolutely insane. We're still doing it, and we're still teaching racism by using that map. And what you have to remember is, in this country, in Spain, it began with religion. It began with religion,
Yes.
and it being perpetuated with religion. And if you don't believe it, you've got to get. I'm sure you've read it, and if you haven't, get it and read it. White Evangelical Racism. Have you read it? Oh my God!
I
Get
have
this book
not.
by
Why
this
evangelical
brilliant
racism
woman,
by
Anthea
Butler?
Butler. Here's a
Andrea
picture of
Butler.
Anthea
That's right.
Butler. Here's Anthea Butler, who has
And
written
Thea.
this absolutely marvelous book about white evangelical racism. It will turn your stomach, and then you'll look around and say to yourself, "What have we done, and why do we keep this up? Why are we still doing this? How much longer is this going to go on? This is a civilized nation? I don't think so. You cannot claim to be civilized if you continue to preach and teach the lie of several different races. This is uncivilized."
I really appreciate that. Actually, what people don't know is that you, Alec, on your website and in your email, you say Jane, one race, Elliott, and you talk about how we all came from Africa. We all come from the same place. We're all brown at our very core,
That's
and
right.
that this is a complete misperception. Yeah.
We're all shades of brown. We are all shades of brown because our ancestors, way back there, 300,000 years ago, all came from a
Hmm.
country on the continent of Africa, where their bodies had to produce a lot of melanin in order to protect their cells from the damaging rays of the sun. But
Hmm.
we, in our brilliance, decided we'd call lighter colored people white and darker colored people black, and we would perpetuate that ignorance until today. This is 2025. Don't you think
Exactly.
we could have gotten rid of it by now?
You would think, but I think people are using it for power play. When I was saying about attitude change coming from the top, I was saying that the person now at the top is saying so many negative things, and they're putting in so many negative policies, taking away DEI, taking away federal protections, taking away and suing universities and federal government agencies for promoting people, or for having DEI organizations, or for having classes teaching about gender. I mean, for God's sake, this, I never thought it would happen
But
later.
but
I've seen so many improvements happen, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have
backward all of
so
us.
far to go, and then
Yeah,
boom, we're
yeah.
back.
But DEI just amuses me no end. Diversity, right? We talk about diversity, and we have people. Mr.
Yeah.
T. Rump has decided that he is not going to
Uh-huh.
allow DEI in any place that he can possibly get rid of it. What he doesn't realize is that the greatest example of diversity on the face of the earth is the human body. Your body is made up of thousands of cells. Each of them are different from all the others. Each of them has a different purpose. Each of them has a different color. It's just, it's amazing when you think, now,
Functioning,
which
yeah.
of my
Uh-huh.
cells would I like to
Yeah.
get rid of? My arms? No, I use those. My eyes? No, I have to have those. My ears? Well, those go to hell eventually. My brain? Well, some of us don't use our brains. I'm busy. Call later. So there is a lot of us that we just give it up. We give it up and go on. We absolutely refuse to talk about DEI when we're walking around in a diverse body. We couldn't. If you think of all the things that we are able to do because of our diversity, it is absolutely amazing. And not it's amusing then when somebody says, "I don't believe in DEI." I say, "Wait a minute. Do you chew? Well, yes. Do your teeth help you do that? Well, of course. Do you taste things? Well, yes. Do your taste buds help you do it? Well, yes. Do you know that your teeth and your taste buds aren't the same, and they're made of different parts, they're different parts of your body, and people look at me like, "Oh, Jane, you're so strange. You, oh, just I'm," and they'll say to me, "I can never visit with you." And I say, "Well, you see, the problem is it's difficult for me. I'm an educator, and when I have to be around somebody who is obviously, totally ignorant about what race means and where it came from, I don't have the right to keep it to myself. I don't have the right to let you go knowing as little as you know right now about race. Because, madam, you need to know, and I've told this to preachers, they don't like it, that the word race, to mean a separate group of people, came out of France in 1580. People constantly say to me, "It's been around forever." I said, "No, it hasn't been around forever." And people say, well, and psychologists call it a social construct. It's not a social construct, it's an anti-social construct. And it's used to
That's a good
keep
way to put
people
it.
in their place. It's an anti-social construct. But psychologists do it their way, and I do it my way. And you'll teach for a long time, and I'll live for a long time and say to you, wait a minute. We just accept this crap because we've learned it since we're in preschool. We've been learning the same thing at the doctoral level as we learned in preschool, and it was lie in preschool. It's time to give it up.
Yeah,
Are
we've
you sure you
learned a
want to
lot.
talk?
Brian, you seem like we have. Oh, are you kidding? I'm actually regretting that we don't have enough time with you. Brian, did you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm like looking at the time and I'm like, we need more hours. But my big thing, I have a big question. I appreciate your mentality and the way you live your life. But was there something in your life or like your upbringing that made you have this point of view on the world? Because I know this, I'm Mexican and gay, but to see a white person go so hard about this is so beautiful to see, you know? So I'm just curious, like, what influence or like what sparked this in your heart and your mind to think and view the world this way?
I had a father who said, "You can't judge a book by its cover or a man by the color of his skin. Now don't do it." But in the next sentence, he would say, "Don't bring any pickaninnies into my house as grandchildren." So, of course, I did.
Mm.
And he accepted them. And he thought, my daughter married a Saudi Arabian, came home with this beautiful little girl in her arms. My father was sitting in the living room in his overalls, his little suspenders, and his short, his sleeves rolled up to the elbow. And he looked up, and I put this little girl in his arms. And he looked at that child and he said, "It's the most beautiful child I've ever seen." And then he looked at that tall Saudi Arabian brown skinned man standing there beside my daughter, his granddaughter, and he said, "That's a good cross." Now, if you aren't a farmer, you don't realize what he was saying, but he bred stock
Oh yeah, I don't.
and he knew what a good cross looked like. He looked at those two people and knew they were different in many ways, but
Oh,
putting them
I
together was a
see.
good cross. It was absolutely the most marvelous moment of my life. And I came home from school one day just furious about how the teachers were reacting to me because of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And he finally said, "Are you sure you're right?" I said, "Yes." "Then put your shoulders back and your head up and smile a lot, and they'll wonder what the hell you've been up to." And I said, "Well, I can do that." Then he said, "Do it." He said, "You know the difference between right and wrong." "Do you?" "Yes." "Well, then do the right thing, God damn it. What do you think I raised you to do? Do the right thing. If it makes you uncomfortable, you're still doing the right thing." So I did the right thing. And it made my life miserable for my children. And I found out when I read the book, Shades of Brown, that was written by somebody named Todd Mealy. He interviewed my daughter, and she said, "Brian and I hated Mom for a long time because of what she put us through. And if I could
Mm.
change one thing about my life, I would tell my children, my four kids, what I was going to do before I went to school that day, and I would warn them about what was going to happen." But I didn't do that because I thought that those good Christian people were going to watch what was happening and if not accepted, at least learn something from it. I was wrong. I should have warned my kids, but I didn't know. I didn't know how ugly racism really is until my kids were on the receiving end of it. I became the only person of color in Riceville, Iowa then, and I still am, which is the way it is. But the kids have all grown and gone, and we've lost one, but they've all married people who care about what is right and what is wrong, and they do what is right.
Wow. I just think it's beautiful to see that. You know, we don't see it enough or often, and even watching that exercise was just I'm trying not to cry because it's so nice to just see somebody stand up for somebody else, you know, and explain to people
But
in such like a simplistic kind of way that they can actually understand and like truly get it.
but would you be in the position you were in if you were also black? Would you
No,
be as
and that's the thing.
acceptable as a gay male?
I also
You're okay
passed.
as long as he's got the right color skin, he's okay. But when he's black, then that is a double problem. You see, and you know that, I know that. You can pretend it doesn't hurt, but it has to hurt. Somebody has written
Mhm.
a lovely woman has written a book called Flipped, and it's going to be a screenplay. You need to get a copy of it. It's just she has the story of a young man driving down the road, and he flips his car into the river or something, and so he's unconscious. They take him to the hospital, and he dreams that he is white in a black society, and he goes through all the things that a black person goes through every day. It is an absolutely
Mm.
fascinating book because, she was here this weekend and she left me books, and I said, "This sounds like what we did." She said, "The motivation for that book was the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise." So the book is written as if somebody who is white has had to go through a few hours of his life as though he's black, as though he's white in a black society, in a society in which the whole thing is run by black people. And that, of course, is the major fear of pale, stale males in this country today. They know that only 15 to 18% of the human beings on the earth are classified as white. And that is a misnomer because none of us are white. But they know that in the United States, we people who call ourselves white are going to be the numerical minority within 20 years, and they're scared to death that people of color are going to want to treat us the way we have treated them. And so we have a thief executive who brought in 59 so-called white people from South Africa to whiten up the land. He closed he closed the Planned Parenthood clinics because he does not want white women to get abortions, because he wants to increase the number of white babies born in this country. This is pure, unadulterated racism added to ignorance, and we have to do something about it. It's just, the whole thing is so ridiculous, even to have to discuss this in 2025. We should have learned better by in the 1900s, but we haven't. We still haven't learned. And here we are, the 2025, and we're still behaving and thinking and speaking and teaching as they did during the Spanish Inquisition. Good Lord, people. And that's another subject if you don't want to
Why
discuss.
can't we get past it, Jane? Why? I mean, why? I have to
because
ask you, like, what is
because
your
Jesus,
opinion? Why can't?
because because Jesus was a man with kinky woolly hair and feet of bronze, because Jesus wasn't white, because we white people have done what
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do. We adjust the environment to fit our needs. That isn't what people of color do. People of color adjust their needs to fit the environment. White people adjust the environment to fit their needs. We do it all the time. We go into a perfectly lovely land
Yes.
and tear it all to hell because we're looking for the resources that we can use when we could live the way the Native Americans did if we choose to, but we don't because
Yes.
we're afraid we can't. We're not very smart. Some of us are very, very brilliant, but we are not very smart. And we absolutely refuse to admit that every one of us, if we trace our DNA back far enough, will find out that we have ancestors from a country in Africa. It's absolutely essential that we
Oh,
do that and
yes.
do it today.
Yeah, no, I did it in 23andMe. I absolutely do. And so this is just, it's a part of all of our identities. So it's a really helpful exercise to do. What? Yes, I'm
But
sorry.
it's an identity. It's an identity based on a lie. Because there are no white people, there are no black people, there are no red people, there are no yellow
Right. We
people.
all come
We're
from it.
all
Right.
shades of
Right.
brown.
Right. Right.
So it's our identity, our self-image is based on a lie. And when you say that to a group of a group of people who have lots of money and they've hired you to speak to them, and you're supposed to help them to feel good about themselves, and you say, well, every person in this room who considers himself, if you're in this room and you consider yourself a member of the white race, please stand. They leap up just so pleased and look around at each other like, see what I can do, see what I've done. And then they do the same thing to those who are black and those who are brown, and those who are yellow and those who are red. And then you say, now, will every person in this room if you're in this room and you consider yourself a member of the human race, please sit down. And then they all sit down, and then they look, and there's an audible gasp in the room, because all of a sudden they're all sitting down at the same time because they're all members of the
Uh huh.
same race. Even though they have what they
Oh,
think are all these different skin colors, they're all members of the same race. And then they start to talk to one another like, how are we going to get out of this? Who hired this bitch? And you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. It's okay. But you have to realize eventually, and I've said to groups, well, every white person in this room, if you consider yourself white, and you want to spend the rest of your life being treated the way we in this country treat our people that we call black, please stand. Not a sound. People, I can see them looking, and I've got tape of it doing it. They look sideways at each other. They don't turn their heads, just look sideways to see if anybody's standing. Nobody stands. And they just sit there, gobsmacked. They don't know what to do. They don't dare stand because that really wouldn't be right, because they don't want to be treated the way we treat people of color. And I say to them, you didn't understand the directions. And I say it again. Nobody stands. I said, you know what you just decided? You know what you just admitted? You know what's happening. You know it's ugly. You know you don't want it to happen to you. What are you going to do about it? They have to pay me anyway, because at that point I say, is my check cut?
but that's just the thing. I mean, I don't know. I would have to ask you, but it seems like people are very much changed through this exercise and they very much appreciate it. That was definitely said from the third graders, the group in the Oprah audience, the prison guards, the college students in the I'm blanking on it.
I,
But with a documentary that was made in 2001.
yeah,
Right.
the storm,
And
yeah.
yeah. And it was amazing stuff to watch. And every person who fought you during the exercise and then afterwards
Yeah.
self reflected and said, I see this now and I
And
really appreciate it. Like it was painful,
and
but
those
they really did get something.
and those that call themselves black or have to call themselves black say, I never saw Whitey have to face the truth before. This is the first time
Wow.
I've seen Whitey react to being treated the way I have been treated all my life. And they acted after the first 10 minutes worse than any black person that I know of has acted after a lifetime.
That
Because
that is true.
this is a
That is
blow to
true.
their ego. This is a blow to everything that they are, because all of a sudden they see the world from another point of view. If some great power the gift could give us to see ourselves as others see us. And that's what I was teaching that day, and it worked. And every time I do it, it works. And the reason the fact that it works, is the reason I have been banned on all college and university campuses in the United States. I am
That's
not allowed
amazing.
to visit because we
How?
do not want our college students to know this. If we educate students, if we educate people, we have to stop doing something that is an extremely profitable enterprise, which is racism. Imagine where we would be if we expected to pay people of all colors the same way we pay pale stale males. That's not going to happen, and we can keep it
Right.
from happening for a while. But it's not going to work. Within 20 years, people we call white will be a numerical minority in the United States of America, and that has pale males scared to death, because they're afraid that we believe in the golden rule that says, "Do unto others as you would have others do unto you." Are we white people treating people of color the way we want to be treated? Well, if they think we believe in the golden
Are
rule, then
hmm,
when they get on top, they're
they're
going to treat
afraid.
us the way we have treated them. So we've
I
used
see.
religion to keep us in this situation, and now we're going to have to do something about the fact that the very things in our Bible that we have used and abused and confused for all these years are going to be used against us unless we educate one another properly, and unless people get off their polyunsaturated fatty acids and go to the library and get the book White Evangelical Racism, and get the book Erasing History. Have you read this book by Stanley? Erasing History. If you
No, I
haven't
haven't,
read
but I
it,
will.
get it and read it. And have you read
I will.
Timothy Snyder's on tyranny? Get the book on
Oh
tyranny.
no, I know that book. Yes, I have that book
Oh,
on my reading list at the moment.
oh,
So
it
yeah,
is fantastic.
yeah.
And now he has written on freedom. Get on freedom and read that. And if you want to put a stop
Okay.
to this crap in a hurry, get this book about
What
Stephen
is that?
Miller. The name of it is Hate Monger. Get this book. This is the man who
Stephen
is,
Miller, who is in the White House now
oh,
and
he
is
is his
from Santa
major
Monica.
advisor.
He's a
You get
local
this
out
book and
here.
read it,
Yeah.
and you will be absolutely infuriated, and you'll say to yourself, okay, it isn't enough for me to do a podcast or a radio show. I'm going to have to change the world, because you, as a pale, stale male, have the power to change the world. So get busy and do it. Don't just talk about it.
Thank you, Jay.
Get
No, I
on
know.
your feet, get on your feet, and get out in the street and make noise, a lot of noise, because we have to put a stop to this.
No, I actually, this is why I wanted to have you. And I feel that, I'm now 62 almost, and I feel like I have so much room to grow as a person. And this is such an important
And you
cause,
have
especially
the freedom
considering
to grow. You have the freedom to grow. You have the right
you're
color skin.
right.
You are the right gender. You are in the right position
Right.
and the right age. You've learned so much
No,
that
I'm
you
six
will be
foot
seen as
two, everything. I got it all. Right.
you have
No,
you have
I'm
everything that it
educated,
takes.
white.
Right. Hey, yeah, you're educated, you're smart, you're white, you're male, you're tall. You've got it all. All you have to do is pretend that you aren't gay when you're around some people, and relax and enjoy it when you're around
Which is
others. But you know when you can, and you know when you can't.
Yeah, no, and the whole thing about passing, we could have gone into that. That's a reality. But but this has been such an illuminating talk. You gave us some great books to read. I think what people are missing, though, your words are super important, but to see these exercises happen in vivo, or like in not well in on film, you could go to my website, Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, on YouTube. I'm going to have the links to these videos that feature you doing your work, and I think it's so powerful. I broke into tears watching Angry Eye.
Yep, yep. It's awful.
It's just so powerful to watch these things.
They are so
Yeah.
real, and these are things that are happening to little white children and then to white adults who have never been treated that way before, and they don't know how to react to it, and so they become what they are, and you watch them become less racist as you go through it, because they don't want to be treated that way. They don't want to be judged that way. Can we talk about something other than the color of my skin? No, we can't, because it's the largest organ on your body, and we're going to condemn you because of that organ. You need to know that. As long as you're white, you ain't right during those exercises. But for the rest of the time, as long as you're brown, it's okay for us to frown. And you know that. And you know that you and I are brown. We started out brown. Our ancestors started out
Yes.
dark, dark brown. They didn't start out black, they started out
Yes.
dark
Yes.
brown.
Yes.
We are all shades of brown. That's it.
Yes. 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 We all come from the same place, and this is, it's just trippy. It's like being, divorced. At what point do you become single again? In a certain way, it's like, people just suddenly decided that we're not connected, we're not all related, and it's just really interesting that people don't really see that there is a connection between all human beings, and like you said, we're all part of the human
We
race.
we are all 30th to 50th cousins. That's a fact. We are all 30th to 50th cousins. And so when somebody says to me, "How are you, cousin Jane?" I say,
50th
"I'm fine.
cousins.
How are you, cousin whoever?" Because we all came from the same place originally. The human race, what we call the human race, Homo sapiens, began in sub-Saharan Africa over 300,000 years ago. And we haven't made much progress lately. It's just the progress that we had made after the
We've gone
50s
backwards.
has disappeared because of a thief executor in the White House. And the one thing we've got to do is
Yeah.
change the name of the White House to the president's residence. This has gone on long enough. Sends
Ah,
exactly the wrong
that's
message. We got
interesting.
to change the
Yes.
name of that building to the president's residence, and you have the power with a radio show to say, let's all get together and insist that we change the name of the White House to the president's residence. And before we
I will do that
criticize
from now
people,
on.
do that and do this. Before
Yeah.
we criticize people who are going to teach religion in the schools, remind them that the days of the week are all named after gods and goddesses. Sun's Day, Mon's Day, Tuesday,
Oh,
Woden's Day, Thursday, Freya's Day, Saturn's Day. And the first 6 months of the year, except for one that's named after a Roman emperor, are named after gods and goddesses. Janus, February, Mars, Avril, Maya, Juno. Teach that in the schools so that these kids know that religion is part of the problem. But religion is very valuable, and the things that we've learned because of religion have changed our lives terrifically. And then insist that we go back to calling this year 2025 AD instead of CE. When I was your age, it was called 20, I was born in 1933, AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord.
hmm
Well, we can't do that, so
hmm
now it's CE, Common Era. We were better off when it was AD.
I love it, Jane Elliott. I can't even say what a pleasure it was for me. Your message is more valuable today than it ever was, and I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to
It's
say
more,
that your
more
message
necessary today. It's more necessary today because we have taken
necessary.
gigantic
Yes,
steps
yes.
backwards. You have to remember that we have a thief executor who is tyrannical, racist, untrustworthy, misogynistic, and puny. Now, if you make an acronym out of those 5 words, what do you come up with?
That
An
spells his
acronym is
name.
that's right.
I
TRUMP.
went right along there with you.
Racist. Hey, and we need to think of that when we are convinced that we made the right decision. We have to remember that tyrannical, racist, untrustworthy, misogynistic, and puny describe the president, our present president of the United States. We need to change our behaviors. We need to change our belief system, and you need to realize that the word belief comes from the word belie, which is to turn it around. I
Hmm.
didn't realize until a couple of weeks. Belief, belie, yeah, okay.
I can't even thank you enough for being here. And thank you for sharing your time with us. It's been incredibly helpful and valuable. It shocks me that more people aren't reaching out to you, that college campuses are closed off to you. It shocks but doesn't surprise. I think that's the statement, because we are going through some very dark
Oh
times,
yeah,
but I really appreciate you
look at what has
sharing. You're
Hartford.
very
Look at
important.
Harvard. Look what's happened to Harvard because they stuck to it.
Yes,
Look what has happened to many
yes,
colleges and universities because we have a person at the helm who can who can take away your funding. And it's all
yes,
about in the long run, the most important color in this country is green, which is the color of our money.
yes. Yes, yes, as Disney just found out, with the latest episodes regarding.
I can't
So,
wait
I
for
mean,
this.
yes, yeah. Hey, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for all of everything you've done throughout your life. Thank you for giving us a great reading list. We'll have to add all of those to our
Go
bibliography.
to go to my website.
Jane's recommended readings.
Go to our website and download the
Oh, it's there?
bibliography. Yeah, go to my
Okay,
website,
great. Perfect.
janeelliott.com, and download the bibliography and download the typical statements. A set of materials that's just first is a set of typical statements that we white folks make all the time. The next is the clarification of those statements,
Yes.
how those words are heard by people who are on the receiving end of it. The third is things that we can do to combat racism. Go through those things and pick one
Right.
of those things that you do to combat racism. Do it for a month. and then pick another one and do another one. You could change the way people react to you, and you could change the way you react to people just by doing those typical statements.
I love it. Yes, it's janeelliott.com, two L's, two T's,
Right.
janeelliott.com.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So, yeah, no, and it's a wonderful website. So I'm glad that that resource is available as well. Thank you so much, Jane, for being here and for everything that you've done.
Thank you
Thank you,
for
Jane.
having me.
I just want to say you're amazing, and I'm so grateful to have this interaction with you and everything you've done your entire life. I feel like I'm sure you know, but like for people of color to see you do everything you've been doing and use your voice in that way is just beautiful. I don't even know how to explain how grateful I am to have you who you are in this world.
But let me make
So
something
thank
perfectly clear here. Without people who were your color and darker, I wouldn't know what I know. I couldn't have learned this from what we call white people. Everything I know, I learned from people who look like you and who are darker than you, and who are of a different sexual orientation than my own. Because if you just stay in your own little world, in your own little lane, you never learn about those who are in the lanes on either side, and so you run to the end, and you still don't know any more than you did when you started the race. And when I talk about the race, I'm not talking about a group of people. I'm talking about the struggle to get through from infancy to adulthood. And I've made it. And if I have made it, and if I know more than I did at the beginning, it's because of people like you. It's not because of people like me. It's because of people like you. Make no mistake about that.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you,
And
Jane. It was really wonderful having you.
and thank you.
Thank you. Um, yeah. So that brings us to a close. Thanks for joining us on Off the Couch. If you saw yourself in today's patterns or what we talked about, take a breath. You're not broken. You're human. You're part of the human race. Insight's the first step. Action's what move the needle. Go to Jane's website and check out what she has to offer. JaneElliott.com, two L's, two T's, and also social support. Also, if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Follow us on Off the Couch with Dr. Greg on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Links to we have studies, we have Jane's website, we have the videos, everything. You can go to the YouTube page at youtube.com/Dr. Greg and hit us up on the socials. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.